You go.
Hi, my name is David Hudson. I use he, him, his. I'm originally from Plano, Texas, and I now live in Indianapolis, Indiana. And a fun fact about me is that I grew up playing hockey very competitively. I played like high school hockey in Plano, and there was a short period of time where I was considering doing that, but I did not enjoy waking up at 5 o'clock in the morning for practice. I much preferred the theatrical lifestyle of afternoon and evening rehearsals and gatherings.
Noted. I'm Lori Wolter Hudson. I use she, her pronouns, and I'm originally from Evansville, Indiana. Woo! And fun fact, if we stay in the sports world, I played competitive softball growing up and went to the World Series twice. And yeah, was a catcher and placed fifth one year in the World Series of fast pitch softball.
Look at that.
Our other lives.
You want to go first?
My senior year of college, directing Three Sisters. I directed that piece sort of as my first play that I ever directed, after coming off of a semester at the Moscow Art Theater. And it was like, you know, the best of times and worst of times. It was amazing, and a really special project that sort of launched what became, a career as a director for me.
Gotcha. I think mine would be a few years ago when we were in New York. We started a theater company and did a bunch of plays in bars, mostly Shakespeare. And at the end of our first full official season, we had said that we were going to do this Shakespeare mashup of two plays, which we said before we had any idea of what that actually was going to look like. And what it turned into was this two-person retelling of all of the Henry plays. And Chris Grant, another UET alum, and I played Hank and Falstaff, Henry and Falstaff, and Lori and Beth, the third part of our company, co-directed it. And the process was crazy, but it really was this amazing collaborative creating, devised Shakespeare, where we were picking and choosing the best speeches and then kind of weaving this narrative together of like what the alternative reality would look like if Falstaff had been this kind of total father figure to Henry and kind of guided him through his transition from punk kid to king of England. And
we say Henry and Falstaff, but really David played Hank and Chris Grant played Falstaff and like a million other characters.
But it was a really fun experience and wacky, and the final Battle of Agincourt took place in the middle of the bar room with a lot of ping pong balls in the style of beer pong. And the audience was throwing just handfuls of ping pong balls at a gigantic table with hundreds of solo cups on it. And it was an epic finale and very quintessential New York theater experience. And
this was this is our company that we ran called 3 Day Hangover. The other co-director and co-founder of that with us is Beth Gardner. And you want to start with yours?
Yeah, I mean, the amazing thing about Henry and that experience was that it kind of was a theater company that we did create. And it came out of this really, it was born out of necessity, which was we needed free or cheap space in New York City, and bars are often free or cheap. And we needed free or cheap material, and Shakespeare is public domain, so it was free or cheap. But the thing that really we kind of strove for in everything that we did with that company, and the thing that I think we continue to carry forward with, is like the collaborative nature of it. the fact that you kind of meet everybody wherever they're at and take their unique set of talents and then infuse that into the work so that you're really seeing the best of each individual person and allowing them to inform kind of the direction that the material is taking.
Yeah, I mean, that I think directly came from some of the stuff that I was doing in college, which is I had in Three Sisters, everyone from like seniors that went on to Yale, Juilliard, ACT, you know, like top grad acting programs, like stellar actors that have been on Broadway. Or whatever, you know, your caliber marker is for a great actor. They're great actors. And then I also had like freshman non-majors that were, you know, like signed up to do theater management and then had 3 lines in this piece. And I was like, we're an ensemble and we will work together and you will be at every rehearsal. And, you know, to their credit, like everybody signed up and was on board for that. And some of our 3 Day Hangover rehearsals started with, what special skills do you have? And I don't just mean like play an instrument, but like, do you have a weird song that you love to whistle? Or what's your karaoke go-to number? Or what's your favorite voices? Or like how, you know, Chris, like, bless him, props not chops, like loves working with all kinds of props. So like, creating characters that can have a monocle, that can, you know, it'd be fantastical in some way. That started from, you know, it, from my perspective, things that were happening with the company that I formed at UE on the show. And another thing we had in that process for me was so much time. Like we had a whole semester to work on it. So you got the opportunity to really build relationships, and people that played family members on stage had time to really get familial. And a thing that we built with our, you know, unofficial 3 Day Hangover company, I think, is that same sense of family, that people had worked together before, or if they didn't, we really were conscious about pairing company members and even within casting, finding folks that like click together, because that takes care of so much of the work when you're
I think
building pieces.
That's such a, and that, I think we've carried a piece of that forward in everything that we've done, and what I would carry forward in any kind of new theater company is that element of like comfort in community and creating a space where people can feel like themselves and can bring their A game to it because they are being encouraged and supported and open. And with New Harmony, I feel like we do the same thing. It's about like indoctrinating people into this idea that you are in this brave space of utopia in New Harmony, and how can we help you? And that was kind of what we always did as producers and directors and scene partners and everything, is build that kind of comfort level, and that creates so much space for good work to happen.
Yeah. You should start.
My first job out of graduate school,
oh, this is
where
good.
I got my equity card, was with a company that many young actors get their equity card with, touring around the country doing children's theater. And I performed in a show called We the People, America Rocks. And I was a rock star version of Benjamin Franklin.
Directed by Wes Grantham. And I toured around most of the eastern half of the United States, from New York, New Hampshire, up in the Massachusetts area, across to Illinois, down to Florida. And it was it was a very difficult, a difficult thing. It was, you just drove around in a like bad van and performed at screaming second graders at 10 a.m. or 9 a.m. And there were lots of days where I was up at 4:30 in the morning to make it to call on time. And so that was a moment where I was like, is this really what acting is? And it was for
5 months, exactly what acting was. So a little chaotic, a little harried. I took up drinking coffee during that time period. It was intense.
I don't know that I've ever had a moment where I really thought I'd do something else. What I could say is that there have been a couple times where I've gone on a streak where I've only been assistant directing or assisting administratively other people, and I think probably similar to being an understudy, it's a really hard job to watch other people do what you want to be doing. And especially when you have big ideas and you don't always agree. There was a show I worked on where I learned a lot about how I did not want to be as a director in a room. It was pretty much everything that director did. I was like, I want to do the opposite of that. So those have been tough moments, but it, you know, if anything, was a push and pull towards coming right back and figuring, you know, solidifying for me what I was excited to do and create. And I think when I got to New York, I fought for so long. I was like, I don't want to start a theater company. My God, there's no way that I have any interest in that. I'll run a theater company. I'd be glad to do that for somebody someday. But after 10 years, it was so clear that our theater company was one of the best things that happened for both of us probably in New York, and so much changed after that. I wish I hadn't fought it for all that time.
I would leave behind the best way to describe that, like the transient nature of it, where it was, the hardest part of it was the, like, every day was in a different town, and that's by financial necessity for the company. They have to tour wherever they're going to get booked. But I would try to find alternatives to that where you could stay in a space longer, where you can really, like, get to know a community of students, or have more than one class come to see something. The best part of that whole experience was seeing the faces of the children by the end of the show, and seeing how, like, we snuck in a bunch of, history into this 60-minute musical, and they learned about the First Amendment, and at the end of it,
sing one of the songs.
So can I.
We the people appointed fun. Anyway.
But that kind of, like, the inability to really, like, dive into that and, like, take that next step with people and get them to appreciate it at a deeper level, and maybe, like, appreciate the art form a little bit more, because it doesn't feel like an art form when it's like 4 funny looking mid-20-year-olds dancing around in fake wigs and
with guitars.
Yeah. But finding that, balance, and spending a little bit more time on it, I think. Yeah.
I think mine, instead of letting go, like, trying to actually be more clear or build better, because working with artists, every artist is different. And so if there's some way to be really clear up front, we were talking about this with New Harmony stuff today, figuring out the structure within how you're going to operate within that, and say, if I could have talked to some of the directors and been like, aware of how I could really help them. Because I think in those assistant part roles or understudying, you just feel like you're not being utilized or used. And the one I was talking about where I really didn't like how that director was in the room, some of the actors really loved working with that director, which I found confusing. But then by the time we got to tech, like I was utilized fully for notes in a way that even when I've worked on Broadway, I haven't been like the notes person. And I felt like, oh, this is where I shine now. And I had to wait through, you know, a couple weeks of sitting around to really then be versed in all the things that they were looking for as we ran the show, as we went into previews, through tech and all of that. And it helped me know how I added to the overall collaboration. And so trying to be really clear with people from the get-go about this is where you can give, like this is how you will contribute. And maybe you don't always know, but trying to be as communicative as possible, as early as possible, so that everybody, you know, knows where they're gonna fit.
I think that it's like leaving behind the territorialism too, which I think comes along. Like oftentimes people feel like, and this is how it just feels like this is my piece and I'm going to protect it as much as I can, as opposed to being a little bit more open to it and welcoming people into the table and saying, you know, what's the skill set that you bring to the table and how can that complement the skills that I bring to the table? And you have to be really secure as a artist and leader and as a person to be able to do that, I think. But I'm reading a book right now because we're about to launch a big strategic planning thing within the New Harmony Project. And it is all about, you know, the 10 skills that make an effective and agile leader, and listening and creating that space to expand and know where your gaps are and how other people can support and fill those is so important. And I think that is a skill that's not often, like, it's hard to teach that. And it's not put in practice that much in educational settings or post-professional or post-educational, early professional settings. So
well, I think it's hard.
That.
Yeah, I think it goes back to too, like when you haven't worked with somebody before.
Yeah.
Figuring all that out takes a minute.
Leaving behind not only working with your friends.
Yeah, which is hard.
Or people that you're
designers that
to.
you love, or yeah, you know, yeah.
Yeah.